Many of our discussions are stimulated by the media, which results in us talking about our history and our heritage. In fact, we begin to question almost everything and go back in time with stories, sending us in a spiral down memory lane. Since that is not unusual, we're actually headed straight down memory lane and the impact that our past have on our present life. If you are interested to hear about the stories we are going to share, keep watching. If you have not yet done so, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Exploring the science in the British Agrarian Revolution. Have you considered how agriculture became such a big deal? Well, that is because the British Agricultural Revolution, which occurred in Europe during the 18th and 19th century, was an era of technological improvement and increased productivity in crops. What really contributed to the advancement of agriculture during the British Agrarian Revolution? The Enclosure Acts, yes. This is where ownership of the land was formalized, which usually meant that local people lost their rights and the title of the land was obtained by the aristocracy and other large landowners. In fact, prosperous landowners and wealthy lords were able to purchase public fields, forcing small-scale farmers and poorer people to no longer graze a few animals to supplement their small income. Due to this, there was migration of people looking for wage labor in the cities. But before the Enclosure Act, though, there was an open field system in place. The challenge with that was the fact that the lands were left unploughed or wasted each year. Lands were left to fallow and animal diseases spread rapidly. Animals also had to be slaughtered in the autumn due to very little fodder crops during the winter to feed them. So the Enclosure Act really allowed for farmers to improve crop yields without having to leave the land to fallow. Farmers were also able to specialize in crops and animals best suited for their climate, soil type, and terrain. Let's zone in on the major scientific practices during the British Agricultural Revolution. There are actually 4 key practices. The first practice, selective breeding. That's also known as artificial selection, and this is when humans interfere with the reproductive processes of plants and animals by selecting and breeding the ones with particular genetic characteristics. How do they do this? Well, the desired characteristics in the parents are selected from a mixed population and are bred together. The offspring with the desired characteristics, those are also bred together, and this process will continue over many generations until all the offspring show the desired characteristic. Robert Bakewell did great work on the Leicester sheep. He was the first to utilize modern animal breeding techniques and his choice of selection in livestock. Using these practices, he developed the new Leicester Longwood from old Leicester sheep. His selection techniques actually allowed for a coarsely boned, slow-growing Leicester to be changed into an animal that puts on weight rapidly and produces less waste when slaughtered. They also provided plenty of fat meat at affordable prices to feed the growing population in the towns during the Industrial Revolution. In fact, they also provided wool and lanolin. Now the second practice, Norfolk 4-course rotation. Most crops actually deplete soil nutrients during their growth cycle. By rotating the type of crop grown in each field each year, this meant that different nutrients were being taken out of the soil and from different depths. Charles Townsend introduced this Norfolk 4-course rotation. For example, he would grow turnips one year, which grow in deep soil, followed by barley the following year, which had roots that remain very close to the surface. So that allowed for the soil below to recover and retain and regain nutrients without the field being left empty. Not only allowing the soil to rest, but growing a variety of crops also helped to naturally replace nutrients in the soil. His method of farming meant that fields no longer had to be left to fallow, and this greatly increased the amount of food that was produced. And his idea completely changed and improved how farming is done today. The third practice, the use of fodder crops such as turnips and clovers. Charles Turnip Townsend also introduced fodder crops. Clover is a plant that is able to add nitrogen compounds to the soil because its roots have special structures called root nodules. And inside these nodules, you will find symbiotic bacteria that feeds by fixing atmospheric nitrogen. This produces nitrates, which are nitrogen-containing salts. Now, without nitrogen, plants cannot photosynthesize properly. Neither do they grow and develop as they should. Thus, they become stunted. If this happens, all life form in the ecosystem will be impacted, and the feeding cycle becomes disrupted because plants are considered to be producers, and producers are the foundation of the food chain and food webs. In fact, clover is considered to be even more nutritious than grass, which was why it was used for grazing the livestock. The livestock in turn was able to produce manure, which could be plowed back into the soil, improving its fertility. Now, turnips. These are fast-growing, high-yielding and well-adapted to seeding into existing pastures with little to no tillage. Turnips actually restrict erosion and nutrient leaching. They improve soil structure and fertility. It also helps to bridge a feeding shortage and provide high-quality feed to maintain or increase milk production. Turnips also help to clean the soil of pests, weeds, and diseases. Now on to the fourth practice, the use of fertilizers by Justus von Liebig. Liebig made great contributions to the science of plant nutrition and soil fertility. He developed the first mineral fertilizers that applied to replenish nutrients removed from the soil by crops, and he clearly saw that mineral fertilizers were a part of a sustainable agricultural practice. He developed a nitrogen-based fertilizer. In fact, he argued that this type of fertilizer was needed to grow the healthiest possible crops. He believed that nitrogen could be supplied in the form of ammonia. Let's summarize. In many ways, British agriculture advanced more rapidly than any other European nation. This resulted in the available farmland increasing due to changes in landholding patterns, which, of course, these new methods of cultivation allowed for increase of crops. Farmers began to utilize barren soil by planting different crops, such as clover and turnips. These plants have roots rich in nitrogen, and of course, that's a necessity for replenishing the soil. The cultivation of turnips was important because they could be left in the ground through the winter, and this ultimately led to an increase in livestock because these plants were also utilized for grazing. Livestock was producing much needed fertilizer for the crops. The addition of fertilizer allowed an improved production rate per acre. There you have it, the British Agrarian Revolution and the scientific practices involved. If you like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your thoughts about this video, and do have a great day. Take care.